DeSantis, of course, began his campaign using the phrase monkeying around, with referring to his black opponent, Mayor Andrew Gillum. But now Gillum has something else. It turns out that Ron DeSantis, in 2011, wrote a book called Dreams from Our Founding Fathers, where he attacked President Barack Obama. And this is what DeSantis wrote about slavery. Quote, "Some of the notorious compromises that demonstrated a toleration of slavery, such as the federal ratio, which allowed the slave-holding states to count 5 slaves as the equivalent of 3 free citizens, were even thought to be necessary to ensure ratification." And check this out. "Counting slaves as less than a full person for purposes of representation benefited anti-slavery states." Now, Cleo, Ron was also saying that, well, even though they ratified slavery, they also put the provisions in the Constitution which allowed us 75 years later to fight against that and actually have the Emancipation Proclamation. And so, thank you, boss DeSantis. We sure appreciate all the good work y'all did to allow us to be able to fight for our freedom some 75 years later. Thank you, boss.
Pretty much. I mean, I've told you and I'll tell you again that these people are desperate. I think they're sociopathic and crazy and really want to stay in power no matter what. Like the brother just said, they're desperate and they really are doing anything to stay in power. So, I mean, what else can be said? This is not surprising at all that this guy had this perspective, at least as out there. Many of them don't have a published book that actually puts their perspectives on Front Street. Many of them feel this way, but I don't really believe they're thinking or saying about black people in terms of inferiority is how they really feel. It's just a smokescreen so they can keep the myth of their superiority in place and for the rest of us to fall forward. But none of this is surprising, not at all.
And Barbara, again, this is the guy who wants to be the governor for all citizens in the state of Florida.
Yes, and we know that this whole fight to preserve and to promote, white supremacist patriarchy in the United States is, this is what this fight about, with some layering of autocrats, for an autocratic, state on top of it. But what we got to understand is that, these folks are going to lie, they're going to dissemble, they're going to use anybody they can to hide behind and do everything they can to hold on to this power. Senator Grassley, that was there presiding over the whole Kavanaugh hearing. And let's be very clear, he's the same man that's blocking any hearing on the Voting Rights Act amendments in the Senate. So these are the same people, misogyny, patriarchy, white supremacy, all go together. People get this stuff confused. They think you got white women over here, black people over there. This whole thing has been there since the beginning of this country. It was founded as a white supremacist patriarchal order. And that has not changed. When you look at the United States, think about this, Roland. The United States is 104th out of 190 countries in women representation in government. 104th. We failed 9 slots in the last 6 years, from 95th to 104th. We're going backwards. So it's very important for us to understand what we're up against, because if we don't see the totality of the challenge, then we don't get it right.